Before the wedding, her family suggested that we sign a prenuptial agreement because her family is well off. She has a lot of property in her name. They were worried that I would try to take advantage of this property or secretly transfer it after the wedding. At first, I wasn't very happy about it. But for her sake, I compromised. You're just average. You're lucky to marry our Olivia, but you need to know your place. Don't try to take advantage of our property. If you don't sign a prenuptial agreement, you can forget about getting married. Mom, Liam wouldn't do that. I implore you not to push us like this. My wife felt sorry for me. She wanted to give me a chance, but my mother-in-law was adamant. She was determined to marry off her daughter to someone else. I didn't want to put my wife in a difficult position, so I finally agreed to the prenup. I never expected that the next day, my name would appear on the list of billionaires. Liam, since you and Olivia have reached the point of discussing marriage, I need to explain something to you. The mother-in-law's family sat at the head of the table. Chin up, arms folded, the atmosphere was very serious and tense. Mum, don't be so serious, my wife whispered, pulling her mother's sleeve. As you know, our family is not the richest, but we are financially well off. Olivia has never known hardship, so that you won't have any arguments about money after you get married. We've arranged for a prenuptial notarization the day after tomorrow. It's more secure that way. My mother-in-law's tone was calm. She sounded serious when she said this. My heart tightened. Isn't a prenuptial notarization of assets a sign of distrust? Does she think that I'm with Olivia for her money? What do you mean? I laughed. I asked a little embarrassed. Will this affect our relationship? It's not a big deal if it hurts feelings. But if someone has ulterior motives and cheats on my daughter's feelings, that would be the worst outcome. My mother-in-law's words carried a hidden meaning. While drinking tea, she kept glancing over at me with her eyes. I found it quite ridiculous. Olivia and I have known each other since college. It's been 7 years since we started dating. It can almost be considered a long-distance relationship. Over the years, I knew her family was well off. She's a rich girl. But I've never wanted her money, and I've never spent her money. Now that my mother-in-law is doing this, it makes me feel a bit cold inside. Mom, let's just enjoy our meal. Why do we have to talk about a prenuptial agreement? Olivia saw that I was a bit uncomfortable. She quickly persuaded her mother. I'm doing this for your own good. Her mother glanced at her. Then she turned to me and said, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just that a notarized contract provides an extra layer of protection. That way I can rest assured. Right, I forced a smile, tilting my head. I asked, are you afraid that I'm after Olivia's money? My mother-in-law gave a cold laugh. Her eyes betrayed her disdain. You know very well. Olivia's name is on 3 properties worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. She also has a 50% stake in the company, and there's countless other assets. With these conditions, I don't believe anyone would be unmoved. I'm with Olivia. I've never thought about how much money she has. I truly love her. Please be assured, I'm definitely not with her for her money. I took a deep breath. Although I felt a little uncomfortable, I could understand my mother-in-law's good intentions. So I said firmly to her, who hasn't opened their mouth yet, talking is useless. If you really want to prove that you truly love Olivia, then come with us to the notary to sign a prenuptial agreement. The mother-in-law obviously didn't buy it. She still looked condescending. Mom, what you're doing will put a distance between us. Besides, we've been together for 7 years. I know exactly what kind of person he is. Olivia became impatient. She quickly grabbed her mother's arm. She shook it gently. It was like she was being childish. It's because you're so naive. That's why I have to think for you. Our family's situation is not comparable to anyone else's. Some people who are not suitable for our family have to get a notarized document first. My mother-in-law's words carried a hidden meaning. Her tone was full of sarcasm and ridicule. I clenched my fists under the table. I kept my lips tightly shut. I didn't say a word. She continued, if you don't agree, then I don't think there's any point in continuing this marriage discussion. My mother-in-law could tell that I was reluctant. Her face turned a little red. She looked a little angry. I said, it's not that I don't want to. It's just that your lack of trust in me makes me feel a little sad. I let out a little sigh. My face showed a look of regret. Does that make you feel cold? I'm doing this entirely for my daughter. It's only natural. You're just a poor boy. Who knows what kind of tricks you might play? What if you take advantage of our family or steal our family's property? I would worry even more. So I just went ahead and notarized it. That way I can trust you a little more. My mother-in-law looked at me with disdain. She didn't even look at me. You've gone too far. I've been with Olivia for 7 years. She knows me best. I don't care about your money at all. Seeing that I spoke rudely, my mother-in-law's face immediately turned sour. She looked at my fiancé askance. Olivia, you decide. Should we do a notarized property agreement? Olivia bit her lip. She looked torn. Her hands kept rubbing the hem of her skirt. After a long while, she whispered, "Mom, aren't we being a bit excessive?" My mother-in-law's face was gloomy. She slammed the table. Angrily, she said, "I'm doing this for your own good. When you get tricked by those cunning people, you won't even have a place to cry. Don't say that." She was worried that this would affect our relationship. Although I didn't agree, I hastened to defend Olivia. HMPH. Don't think I don't know what you're up to. Her father and I also got a notarized marriage certificate. We've always had a good relationship. We've never grown apart. I think you're deliberately trying to drive a wedge between us. My mother-in-law narrowed her eyes. She looked at me angrily. That's not what I meant. I didn't want a notarized marriage because I've had enough. My mother-in-law interrupted me. She folded her arms. Her tone was unhappy. If you don't want to, I don't think you should get married. I was a little surprised. My mouth opened slightly. I didn't expect that in their eyes. Interests were more important than happiness. Mom, Olivia stamped her feet in frustration. Tears were about to fall. Auntie, is this really necessary? In your opinion, is Olivia and my happiness not as important as a piece of paper? Are you forcing us? I looked gloomy, clearly unhappy. If you dislike me so much, why didn't you stop me when Olivia and I got together? I did it for your own good, said my mother-in-law. Who knows if you'll change your mind after you get married? After all, not everyone has seen the world. I've already been lenient by making an exception for you and Olivia. Now you have to get married in a civil ceremony. I took a deep breath. I tried to suppress my dissatisfaction. I forced a smile. I still have to thank my mother-in-law for her support in the beginning. But now, it is absolutely impossible for us to get a pre-marriage notarization. Our marriage should be decided by ourselves. I don't care about your family property, so you don't have to worry. I really don't care about these things. I fell in love with Olivia just because she is kind and cute. Our personalities match very well. Even after I knew about her family background, I never thought about cheating on her for money. Why, don't you love her anymore? Don't you want to get married? My mother-in-law narrowed her eyes. Frowning, she asked, I just feel that you are insulting my character. As for Olivia, I will definitely marry her. But I won't do it in a civil ceremony. I am firm in my attitude. My mother-in-law was so angry that she covered her chest. Pointing at me, she couldn't speak for a long time. In the end, she just said, "Fine. Then you can forget about getting married. We won't recognize you as our son-in-law." After saying that, the mother-in-law immediately stood up. She took Olivia by the hand and was about to leave. "Mom, please don't do this. We really love each other." Although Olivia didn't want to leave under her mother's insistence, she finally stood up and left. Before she left, she looked at me with a complex look in her eyes. It seemed like she was reluctant to go. I sighed helplessly, looking at the empty restaurant. I felt a little lost. 10 minutes later, I finished paying the bill and walked out of the restaurant. I accidentally noticed that Olivia's car was still parked in front of the door. I was a little surprised. I wanted to go over and try to persuade her to stay. I've told you many times, this poor kid doesn't look reliable. Why do you still insist on being with him? My mother-in-law's voice was sharp and mean. She and her daughter were talking in the back of the car. They didn't notice me standing there. "Mom, even if you think he's not a good catch, can you please consider my happiness for once?" Olivia was no longer as hesitant as before. Instead, her brow was furrowed. With an unwilling tone, she asked, "Your happiness? If it's not notarized, how can you be happy? A person like him who came from the bottom hasn't seen much of the world." I thought a little scare. He would obediently go to the notary. I didn't expect him to be so difficult. Just talking to him makes me feel uncomfortable. Olivia froze after hearing this. After a while, he let out a soft sigh. You're right, I definitely won't hand over my assets to him, although we have feelings for each other. I don't believe he has no intentions towards me at all. Exactly. Just looking at you with him makes me feel uncomfortable. He doesn't seem to be very refined. His eyes are shifty. In case he takes our money, people like him might even renege on their debts. After all, they are in financial trouble. Sometimes they might do something irrational. My future mother-in-law seems to have a particular aversion to me. She covers her nose whenever I'm mentioned. Olivia's face is now beet red. She never imagined that her boyfriend would be so unpopular with her mother. He's nothing. I could take him with a little effort. It would be easy to deal with him. Don't worry about it. Look at you. You shouldn't have got together with someone like this in the first place. I could see that I couldn't talk her mother out of it. Olivia had to agree, so I played the poor guy. I tricked him into going to the notary. I'll figure out the rest later. I stood a short distance away from the car. My mother-in-law spoke loudly. I could hear everything she said. Olivia's gentle and kind image in my heart instantly collapsed. I felt so angry. I had never been humiliated like this before. I always thought that Olivia was forced to do this, so I suppressed my anger. I thought that if I insisted, my mother-in-law would change her attitude. She would see that I really wanted to marry Olivia, and that I wasn't just after their family's wealth, which meant very little to me. A few days passed. Olivia never contacted me. I started to feel uneasy, so I called her directly, but there was no answer. I suddenly remembered the conversation I had overheard by the car. Did my mother-in-law forbid her to see me again? I was so anxious. I grabbed my jacket and was ready to go to Olivia's house, but when I got there, I was both surprised and angry at the scene I saw. Olivia was chatting with a man her age. The man was quite handsome. He was wearing designer clothes. The two looked very compatible. He asked, "Why are you here?" Olivia was surprised. She was also a little flustered. He said, "I was worried that something went wrong because of what happened last time. I saw that you didn't reply to my messages, and you didn't call me, so I came right over. What are you guys doing?" I looked at the delicate pastries and the steaming jasmine tea in front of me. I knew in my heart that this was a blind date. I asked this question with an answer in mind. Olivia was ashamed and hesitated to speak. She pursed her lips. I asked him, "What are you doing here?" The mother-in-law suddenly appeared. She held her head high and walked straight towards me. She said, "I'm introducing my daughter to a new marriage partner. If you don't have anything to do, please leave her alone." The corners of her mouth rose slightly. She wore a meaningful smile. It seemed to be giving me a warning. She said, "We haven't broken up yet. Isn't what you're doing a bit excessive? This is not forcing me anymore. It's simply not taking me seriously." I finally couldn't hold back anymore. I didn't expect that in order to force me to do a prenuptial agreement and disregard her happiness. She let her chat with a stranger here. She said, "You think you can marry my daughter just because of your family background. I'm doing this for the sake of your 7 years of relationship. I'm giving you face. I didn't expect you to be ungrateful." Then there's nothing more to discuss between us. After my mother-in-law finished speaking, she wanted to call security to get rid of me. I quickly took Olivia's hand and said to her, "What you're doing will harm her. If she marries someone she doesn't like, how can she be happy in the future?" The mother-in-law sounded as if she had heard something ridiculous. A dismissive smile appeared on her face. She said, "He is worth millions. He is better than you. A young man with nothing. At least I don't have to worry about someone else controlling my wealth in the future," the mother-in-law said in a strange tone of voice. Her gaze meaningfully surveyed me. "You can't introduce him to any new marriage prospects either. We haven't broken up yet." Facing my mother-in-law's unreasonable behavior, I had to raise my voice to express my dissatisfaction. She said, "If you don't want to do a prenuptial agreement, you can forget about getting married. Why should you hold up my daughter?" My mother-in-law was resolute in her attitude, determined not to give up until a prenuptial agreement was signed. "Are you threatening me?" I sneered. "I've said it before. I don't care about your family fortune. I've seen a lot of people like you. I don't care at all. You've seen a lot. A background like yours with neither power nor wealth. You're still not ashamed to say you don't care. I can see you just itching to marry my daughter and take over our family's wealth." My mother-in-law heard me speak loudly to her. She was instantly angry. She glared at me. "Mr. Ding is a match for our Olivia. He even offered to have a prenuptial agreement drawn up. The bride price is also over 1,000,000 yuan. How can a nobody like you compare? Since you're not getting married, I'll of course have to introduce my daughter to someone new." My mother-in-law shrugged her shoulders. She didn't seem to care at all. She completely took me lightly. She said, "I disagree. You're actually willing to give your daughter's happiness away so easily for money. Where in the world is there a mother like you?" I really couldn't hold back anymore. I yelled directly at her. "This is our family's business. What does it have to do with you? After all, it's not because you don't agree with the prenuptial agreement. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to go through all this. Have you asked Olivia what she thinks?" I looked through my mother-in-law's eyes behind me at Olivia, who had lowered her head in shame and was unable to speak. She looked so pitiful. Tears were welling up in her eyes. It broke my heart. I was torn between conflicting emotions. My feelings for Olivia were genuine. I couldn't bear to see her so sad and unhappy, marrying someone you don't love. I took a deep breath and slowly spoke. "Olivia, you want to marry him?" Olivia immediately shook her head and said to me with a hint of grievance, "I've tried so many ways to persuade my mother, but she just won't agree. I really don't know what else to do." As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice was full of sobs. I suddenly remembered what she said in front of the car that day, and my heart sank. Could it be that today was something they had deliberately arranged to get me to agree to a notarized contract? I hesitated a little, but in order to see what this family really wanted, I only paused for a moment and then continued. "Look, your daughter has already said it. She doesn't want to marry anyone but me. Why are you forcing us?" I frowned. I asked Olivia's mother with a frown, "Is a prenuptial agreement really that important? She's young and doesn't know any better. But I know what's going on in my heart. I don't trust you, and I don't like you. I just don't want to put it that bluntly. If you are willing to do a prenuptial agreement, I will not pursue this matter any further. But if you are not willing, you can forget about getting married." After saying this, the mother-in-law stared at Olivia discontentedly. "How dare you speak for him? I have already made up my mind about this matter. No one can change it. Mom, I sincerely beg you. I really don't want to separate from him. We have been together for 7 years. How many 7 years are there in life? Can you just do this for my future happiness? Just give in a little." Olivia's tears kept falling. It was heartbreaking to watch. She said, "I'll let you get a prenuptial agreement. It's all for your own good. Since you say you love her, why can't you just say yes?" The mother-in-law sneered. Her eyes were full of contempt for me. She said in a harsh tone, "I can see that you're only after the money. There might be someone else out there." I clenched my fists. I felt very uncomfortable. This was the first time I had been threatened. But when I saw Olivia crying like a pear blossom in the rain, I softened a little. I said, "I can agree to a prenuptial agreement, but after we get married, you can't interfere in our lives anymore." In the end, I gave in. "Okay, as long as you don't touch our family money, you can live how you like. I won't interfere." Olivia's mother saw me nod my head in agreement. She immediately agreed to my request. "Next Monday, you will go to the notary to have your premarital property notarized. This will also enable you to get married earlier." I gritted my teeth and nodded. I immediately instructed my assistant to prepare the notarization documents. As soon as I hung up the phone, I saw Olivia. Olivia's mother and the so-called young master from a wealthy family walk out together. Olivia's mother said with a smug smile, "I told you this would work. See, he's obediently going to the notary office." Olivia's mother said confidently, "People in difficult financial situations often have ulterior motives. It's right that we're being careful so we don't get taken advantage of later." Olivia asked worriedly, "Mom, you're still the one who has the answers. But what if he finds out we're faking it?" Her words made me jump. Could it be that today's whole thing was a setup by them, just to get me to agree to the property notarization? Even if he really finds out, what can he do? He's just a poor kid with no power. With my influence, I can deal with him easily. If that doesn't work, I'll let you and Mr. Ding act out your fake romance. I dare him to say anything." Olivia's mother spoke very pointedly. Her words were laced with sarcasm. Olivia didn't say a word. She silently followed her mother. I stood by the wall. I heard their conversation clearly. It turns out that today's events were planned by them, just to force me to make a choice. And my most trusted fiancé. Unexpectedly, she also joined them in hiding it from me and lied to me. My heart immediately turned cold. Although it was difficult to easily sever the 7 years of affection, even though I had many grievances in my heart, I still chose to endure, preparing for the notarization next Monday. Monday came quickly. I took the materials that my assistant had prepared in advance and went to the relevant department to meet Olivia and her mother. She warned me, "No more tricks. If you want to get married, you have to complete the prenuptial agreement today." When my mother-in-law saw me, she still had that condescending attitude. She didn't treat me like her son-in-law. I didn't say anything. I just nodded slightly. I didn't want to argue with someone so narrow-minded. After we handed the documents to the relevant department, the staff started processing them. Early the next morning, Olivia and her daughter asked me to go with them to pick up the certificate. They even said with a mocking tone, "I'll feel relieved when I get the certificate today. After all, character is a matter of trust. I only believe in written proof." I ignored them. I walked into the department with a cold face. "Have you heard? The New York rich list was announced today. My friends are all talking about it. It seems that the list is updated every 3 years. Let's hurry up and see if there are any new faces on the list. It's office hours. Don't be so nosy." I just walked in the door. I heard a few staff members whispering as they walked past. We 3 overheard their conversation. On this list, although our ranking is not high, at least we are on it, unlike some people who probably don't even know what this list is. My mother-in-law gently fixed her hair, looking exceptionally elegant and confident. I smiled slightly and said with a teasing tone, "Oh, I'm not really familiar with this list." While we were talking, the notarized results had already been delivered to us. My mother-in-law took it with a smug look. She looked at me condescendingly. "Now it's been proven. It's official. We don't interfere with each other's property, and you can't even think of living in our house, trying to take advantage of our family. Don't even dream about it." She was gloating. Olivia suddenly yelled from the side, "Mom, look." Olivia's mother had wanted to scold her for making a fuss, but when she saw the proof, her face suddenly turned pale. She looked terrified. Then, despite her image, she shouted and then pointed trembling fingers at me. "You have dozens of luxury properties in your name, and they are all in rich neighborhoods. What exactly is your identity?" As I watched her expression of surprise, I smiled without saying a word, because I had long suspected that this day would come. Olivia's mother suddenly remembered something. Immediately, unconvinced, she took out her phone. I don't know what she was busy working on. Seeing how capable I was, she couldn't help but doubt. "You're not." Then, she began to flip through this year's New York rich list. As she flipped through it, she kept on sarcastically criticizing me. But suddenly, her mocking voice stopped. Her face showed obvious expressions of shock and disbelief. It was as if she had seen something unbelievable. "How is this possible? How could you possibly come in first place? Your assets are over $10 billion. Suddenly, almost everyone's gaze was focused on me. Olivia's mother almost fainted. She swayed and fell into her chair. She was full of surprise. Her eyes were wide. She covered her chest with her hands and said, "How come you never mentioned this? Look at her." I couldn't help but laugh. I casually spread my hands. "You never gave me the chance to say anything. You wanted a prenuptial agreement. Now it's done. What's there to say?" I looked at them with a look of innocence. At first, I did intend to tell them about the assets in my name, but then the mother-in-law kept on giving me a hard time, so I gave up on the idea. She said, "You're cheating. You're not even honest about your marriage. This prenuptial agreement doesn't count." The mother-in-law waved her hand angrily. She wanted to tear up the notarized document in her hand. She said discontentedly, "Why do you get to say all the nice things and not me? At first, I didn't want to get the notarization. You threatened me with our marriage. Now I've agreed. But you've changed your mind again. You keep changing your mind. You're the ones who aren't being honest." Seeing her regretful and angry face, I felt quite amused. At first, she didn't want me to take advantage of them. Then I found that I was a better catch. "So you wanted to back out. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Before I didn't know you. Now that I do, I think you and my daughter make a good match. Let's skip the notarization." My mother-in-law saw my cold expression. She immediately smiled and came over to take my arm. "Look, we've been working so hard. If I had known it was a misunderstanding, and since you're worth over 100 million, you definitely won't be thinking about our family's money. So let's forget about the notarization." "How can we just forget about it? Property in your name is property. Does that mean property in my name isn't? I'm also worried that some people might just be here for the money." "You're right. A prenuptial agreement is really important." As soon as my mother-in-law heard me say that, her face immediately changed. She frowned and impatiently said, "I can see that you don't want to marry our Olivia. Anyway, we don't believe in this prenuptial agreement. We won't recognize it." "Why doesn't it count?" I frowned. I looked at her angrily. "I can see that you're obsessed with money. You think that now that I'm rich, you want me to share my marital assets with your daughter. Don't even dream of it. You're not even willing to share your money with me. Why should I share with you? You always threatened me with our marriage. Now I've gone to the notary, and you're still threatening me with the marriage. You think I'm an idiot?" I pulled my arm away from my mother-in-law. I watched her expression with interest. It was really interesting. She hurried to explain, "Don't be ridiculous. I've always supported your marriage. But everyone has their own selfish interests. I was just trying to protect my assets. At the time, I didn't know you were so rich. I was worried you'd take all our family assets." "That's only natural, isn't it?" The mother-in-law's smile immediately disappeared. She said with justification, "You simply looked down on me. You felt that I came from a lowly background. I was not good enough for your daughter. That's why you made me do a prenuptial agreement. You were afraid that I would take advantage of you. Now that I have assets worth over 100 million, you want to take advantage of me again. Am I right?" I laughed out of anger. I directly told the truth. My voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just so everyone can hear clearly. I heard that this woman resented her son-in-law for being poor. She insisted on a prenuptial agreement, now that her son-in-law is rich. She wants to back out. I can hear her calculating. How can there be such a person? If I were this man, I would definitely not agree not to do the prenuptial agreement. I think she just wants to ingratiate herself, because she sees that the man is rich. I have seen many people like this. The people around them whispered. They were all talking about the mother-in-law's faults. "Liam, don't think that just because you're rich now, you can marry my daughter so easily. I just want to find a safeguard for my assets. Isn't that right?" The mother-in-law looked unhappy. She scowled at me and questioned me. "You're right. Then I'm right to protect my assets now. Why are you pushing me like this? Do you really want me to cancel the notarization? You think this is a game? You can prove it if you want. Now I don't want to prove it. Can someone just cancel it for you?" I think it's pretty ridiculous. I really can't say anything about the way she treats people like their dishes. You're my son-in-law. You should listen to me. You're going to marry Olivia soon. There's no need to make things unpleasant now. My mother-in-law whispered to me, "If you're willing to give up the notarization, I can give you 30% of our family's shares." I smiled and shook my head. "I've said it before. Your family's money means nothing to me. I don't care. So, I don't want this 30% stake. If you want your daughter to marry me, the notarization must go through. You're going too far." When my mother-in-law saw that I wouldn't agree, her face immediately changed. She shouted, "In the past, when you had no money, you went to great lengths to explain that you wanted to marry my daughter. Now you're number one on the rich list. You've started acting like a snob. You think the two of us have no one to back us up. I think you may have misunderstood. I'm just doing the same thing you did to me. How can this be bullying you? What about all the mean things you said to me before? And all those elaborate plans? Do I deserve that?" I put on a smile. I looked at them coldly. My tone was icy. It immediately silenced the mother-in-law. "You are really a smooth talker. You have no shame. Now that you have achieved something, you want to get rid of us. Today, let everyone see your true colors." The mother-in-law scolded loudly in anger. She was so angry that her face turned red. Her neck became thick. She responded, "Say whatever you want. Even if you slander me again and again, it will not change my determination to get a notarization. I'm just legally protecting my property. But in your mouth it sounds so nasty. I think it's because you haven't achieved your own goal. That's why you're so angry. My mother-in-law pointed her finger at my nose. It seemed like she wanted to say something else. She even wanted to rush over and lecture me. I quickly dodged. She missed. I'll make things clear today. If you want to accept me as your son-in-law, you have to agree to let this notarization take effect. Otherwise, there's no way we can talk." My tone was firm, my attitude clear. I would never let them bully me again. I can't stand people who like to take advantage of others. They should also taste the injustice I have suffered. After saying this, I turned around and left. I didn't look back. In the past few days, Olivia has been messaging me all the time, urging me to understand her mother's actions. I find it quite ridiculous. I never thought that the person I have always liked would be so unreasonable and help others do wrong. I ignored the mother and daughter, but I didn't say anything about canceling the engagement since they wanted to drag this out. I'll play along. A week later, the day we were supposed to get married, I suddenly got a call from my assistant. Someone had broken into my house, and they claimed to be the owner. My heart sank. I knew without a doubt that my mother-in-law had moved in with Olivia. I immediately dropped what I was doing and drove to the central villa. As soon as I entered the door, I saw my mother-in-law sitting on the sofa. She looked very relaxed. It seemed like she really considered this place her home. "Hubby, you're back." Olivia smiled weakly and put her arm around me. Her attitude of trying to please me made me feel a little uncomfortable. "Don't call me that. Your mother hasn't agreed to our marriage yet. If you keep calling me that, she'll be unhappy," Olivia said in a strange tone of voice. Her face was clearly red. Finally, she let go of me. "My son-in-law, you are wrong. You will marry sooner or later anyway. As long as you agree to waive the notary, I will arrange the wedding right away." At this moment, I felt both pity and sadness for Olivia. Her mother was so greedy for money that she was treating her marriage like a joke. I couldn't help but say to my aunt, "Auntie, you've got it all wrong. I came here today not to discuss marriage, but to ask you to leave my house. You came uninvited. I have put up with it. Now, please pack your things and leave quickly, otherwise. Don't blame me for being rude. I looked serious. I'm not joking. Don't pretend with me. Now you want to get rid of us. Forget it. Since you and my daughter are getting married, this house belongs to me. I can live here if I want to." The mother-in-law put on an unreasonable look. She raised her chin triumphantly. She looked at me arrogantly, as if to say that there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I clapped my hands and said, "In the past, I only thought that you loved to ingratiate yourself with the rich. You look down on the poor. You speak meanly. I never thought that you were so shameless. You dare to say such things. Aren't you ashamed? I'm blushing for you." I deliberately emphasized the tone of the last few words. The words carried disrespect and contempt for her. "I'm the elder. How can you speak to me like this? I think you're out of line. With an attitude like yours, don't even think about marrying my daughter." My mother-in-law was furious. She stood up immediately and confronted me. I told her straight away, "That's good. I've come here today to make things clear. I'm not getting married. And you can forget about the prenuptial agreement, my house and money. You won't get a single penny." I took out the notarized document and tore it up in front of them. "The gift I gave your family when we got engaged. Consider it Olivia's dowry. I hope she will find a better partner in the future. This is also a good deed I have done. Wash the stench of money that you have rubbed off on me well." My tone was stern. My voice was cold. Olivia was scared and burst into tears. She said, "I'm sorry. I really didn't mean it. I didn't want to force you either. But my mother said that was the only way to make you listen. I've been influenced by her too." Olivia clung to my sleeve. Her eyes were filled with fear, trying to make me change my mind in the past. If I saw her crying so sadly, I would definitely comfort her. But now, looking at those big teary eyes, I only feel annoyed. I've been exhausted both mentally and physically by them. If I insist on marrying her, I'm afraid that our married life won't be happy either in that case. I might as well just cancel the engagement. How dare you? Olivia's mother trembled with anger. If you dare to withdraw from the engagement, I will let everyone know that you are a man of no integrity. It's just because you've become rich that you want to abandon your fiancé. I'll see about that. Let's see if everyone's spittle can drown you. Olivia's mother shouted emotionally. Her voice became hoarse and trembling. She said, "Do as you like. If you continue to slander me, I will take countermeasures. Don't blame me if I don't spare your face. This is getting out of hand. You're the ones who will be embarrassed. I'm not afraid. I hold my head high. I watch what Olivia's mother will do to get me, the golden son-in-law, into her house. She confronts me. You were the one who vowed to marry my daughter. Now you're the one who's broken the promise. How can you do this? You don't need to say any more. Now you two get out of my house right now, or I'll call the police." I was about to reach for my phone. Olivia's mother knocked it out of my hand. She glared at me angrily and shouted, "Liam, you've gone too far. I'm staying here today. What are you going to do about it? I'm your father-in-law. I have every right to stay in your house. Even if the police come, they'll have to support me." Seeing how unreasonable she was, I didn't bother being polite. I just pushed her to the ground. I warned her, "Fine, if you say so. I'll call the police now. Don't say you regret it later." I immediately called my assistant and reported the incident to the police. The police arrived at my doorstep very quickly. I told the police, "Comrade policeman, this person is being so unreasonable. He and my daughter were engaged. But now he's backtracking and falsely accusing us of trespassing. But this is clearly my daughter's house. How can this be considered breaking and entering?" The mother-in-law started complaining to the police officer. I found it particularly ridiculous when I heard it. "You're talking nonsense. When did I marry your daughter? When did I give you this house? Do you have any proof? Even if we were engaged, I had a prenuptial agreement. It proves that the house belongs to me alone. What you're doing is breaking and entering. Where's your justice?" The mother-in-law suddenly burst out laughing, her eyes fixed on the confetti in the trash can. "We never did a notarized contract with you. The house is your joint property. It's mine." I smiled and looked down. I took out my phone and said, "You're not stupid enough to not know that there's an electronic version of a notarized contract, are you? For such an important proof, how could I only prepare one copy?" I handed the notarized document to the police. I explained the whole story in detail. The police officer said to me, "You are suspected of illegally entering someone's home. You have violated their property and personal rights. Please cooperate with our investigation." Faced with all this evidence, the police of course believed that I was telling the truth. But my mother-in-law was very emotional. She shouted, "No way." She grabbed me by the shoulders and kept shaking me. She questioned me. "You already have a net worth of over 100 million. You own more than 10 houses. What's wrong with giving us one? You call me a snob. I think you're the one who really looks down on the poor. You've gone too far." I shook her hand off forcefully. I said angrily, "Stop making trouble. I'm doing this because you're Olivia's mother. From the beginning, you've made things difficult for me. I've put up with it. But you've become more and more outrageous. Now you're even behaving irrationally. I've always said you'd regret this. You've only yourselves to blame." After I finished speaking, the police took away the mother and daughter. Before they left, Olivia's mother glared at me. She gritted her teeth and called me a heartless man. Olivia was too shocked to say anything. She just gave me a deep look. Then she followed her mother out. The marriage was ruined. I felt both exhausted and sorry. But at the same time, I felt a sense of relief. People like them, who despise the poor and look down on others, really deserve to suffer. Olivia's mother was fined for trespassing, but she didn't take anything from me. She even paid me some money. After that, I never had any contact with them again. Olivia was forced by her mother to apologize to me. Her mother also came to see me a few times, but I was firm. I treated them coldly. After a while, they gave up. They started spreading bad things about me, but their behavior had already spread. People in the industry were laughing at them. They used their story as a topic of casual conversation. For people who love to take advantage of others and are selfish, Seeing the benefits slip away from them was probably the most uncomfortable thing. I deleted all contact information for Olivia. I completely forgot about the whole thing.